it will be recorded, but I edited out of the final clip. So do you see a countdown right now?
Yeah, I see it.
Perfect. So do you see a little thing that says at the top, actual recording is it's at a higher quality?
I see it says recording. Um,
Okay,
I
but
don't. Yeah,
basically,
I see actual recording is higher quality. I do see that. Yes.
perfect, perfect. And the other thing is that do you see a little thing that says 32% upload next to your name? It hovers up and down.
Yeah, yeah, I see that.
So when we're done and I say goodbye and everything, I'm gonna finish the live, but please do not log out. I'm gonna finish the live, then I'm gonna stop recording and we can continue chatting. It's not live, it's not recording, but we'll continue like now so that I go over a couple of little things for closing. All right?
Alrighty.
To go live on there we are. We're ready to go live on YouTube. We're ready to go live on Facebook as well.
Cool
So
beans.
ready. So no question is I mean we can even talk about your job, right?
Man, no, not really much questions. I'm just here. I mean,
Okay.
here to answer any questions you got, man.
Perfect, perfect. But we can even talk about your job, like just what do you do and try to connect it to music, right?
Yeah, no. So job wise, I'm a department manager at Floor and Decor.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you've
I
ever been
mean,
to a Floor and Decor yet.
oh yeah, I love that store. Actually, I'm gonna have to ask you for insider tips because I love that store. But
Oh yeah.
live, so you should be seeing us, and we are live. Hola, 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 y bienvenidos. Welcome, Jared. How can I pronounce your last name correctly, sir? Because I've always wondered about that.
It's Shreen. Shreen is how you pronounce it.
Shreen.
Yep.
Awesome, awesome. So let me ask you because I have been wanting to be on the record with you for a while since I've only seen you performing a Taylor Swift tribute band, and here's
Hmm.
my Taylor Swift T-shirt. I'm a huge fan of
Wonderful.
Taylor Swift, but then I realized that you started your career on a completely different direction. Why don't you talk to us about that? How did you start into recording or producing? Where were your first, let's call it, more realistic music experiences before you joined the Taylor Swift tribute band?
Man, so whenever I started out, I didn't really know anybody, of course, like anyone else starts, and I found a band called Revengeance in Dallas, and I had known them from other family members that have known them throughout the scene and stuff, and I reached out, went to one of their shows, and long story short, man, I just became friends with Taylor and then all those band guys, and then just kind of got sucked in.
Hold
Um,
on, hold on. I began talking about Taylor Swift, and I know that their
yep,
scene is pretty tight, and there's a few people
right.
that know each other by first name. But for the record, when you said you got close with Taylor, you don't mean Taylor Swift, do you?
I wish. I wish. Would be I probably would be living in a mansion somewhere if that was no, Taylor Dennis. Taylor Dennis. Yeah,
Okay.
he was in yeah, yeah. You know Taylor. You know who he
I know him. Just for the audience, because just like when you put out a project out there, it starts with your friends, and you hope that it will grow and reach a larger audience. And it's the same with this one. I know that it's just a handful of people who may be tuning in live and watching the videos now, but the nature of the podcast is that it stays on record, and later, hopefully, more people will listen to it as we seek to promote the
Yeah.
self. But please continue with the story.
Yeah, so I mean I just kind of became friends with those guys and over time, man, we just I kind of began guitar teching for them, and so I'd go to every show. I'd have my mom drive me, my dad, whoever drive me to their shows. They played O'Reilly's a lot. I'm not sure if you've been out there. But
I've
yeah,
been
they
to the
would.
O'Reillys for a lot of original bands there.
Yeah, yeah. So I would, man, I was like 15, and I would have my parents just drive me out there, and just became closer and closer every time. And then eventually, Taylor and I were like, "Hey, man, we should record a cover." And so we recorded a cover of "My Curse" by Killswitch Engage over at
Okay.
one of their buddies' houses over in the Colony, and we did that, and then it just became, I would guitar tech, more shows, and then I ended up going on tour with him in 2013, and still, just really good
Okay,
friends with all
but
the guys.
you sped through that part a little bit too fast. Let me stop you for a second. So you're telling me that you would beg your parents to drive you to shows because you were not even of the age of even having a driver's license, right? You said you were
Right.
15.
Yeah, yeah.
What got you into the desire to catch live shows at 15, Jared? Because as we are speaking now in July of 2022, that's not very common for 15-year-olds to want to go to live rock and metal shows. What was the
Man,
bug with you?
I just I kind of grew up around music, man. My dad, he plays drums. Was always in that scene of things. Um, I would go to practices with him as early as, my God, probably 6, 7, some sort. I can't remember, but he got me to start playing drums for him, or not for him, but with him, and I would just jam with that. So I was used to being around that scene, and then I started playing guitar at the age of 13,
Wow.
12 or 13, 12 or 13. So that just got me. I had that fire underneath me, that I wanted to be in a band, and I wanted to play shows, and so I just became friends with them, and it was just really cool to be around that environment. And I knew eventually I would be that guy playing those shows, and I'd have my own sets of friends, which I'm still friends with all those guys in Revenges to this day, at least most of them, and that's really what got me into it. It's just
That's a cool. Listen, I can see your fire in this, even in telling the story, because I want to stop down and try to deconstruct some of the aspects of it. You said that your father played drums. Did he play in a band?
he did. Yeah, he played in a few different bands. Yeah, back in, oh man, I don't know, early 2000s, late 90s. Yeah,
Okay,
they
what
played
year
they
were
played
you
a lot
born,
of local
Jared?
shows. I was born in '96.
96. Oh my goodness, you're 26 years old. So
Yeah.
by the time you were 6 years old, you already remember your dad playing the drums and playing with buddies, actually in a band, not just rehearsing alone. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we would go to his spaces, or he would have guys come over to the house. So,
And what kind of music was he playing?
man, he loves the heavy metal.
Okay.
He was that type stuff. Yeah, I mean, his favorite bands are like Iron Maiden and Judas Priest, Pantera, that type stuff. So, yeah,
Nice,
that's
nice. So you're 6 years old and you're listening to your dad jam on the drums with friends, and I'm guessing that the influences of Pantera, Judas Priest, and Iron Maiden were kind of noticeable. How about your mom? How did your mom feel about having that? I would call it beautiful music. My mom would call it disgusting noise. But what would your mom say about that playing around the house?
Oh yeah, you say some people get a disgusting noise. Yeah, and I have some family members like that. My mom though, she wasn't ever like, she didn't bat it down or anything. Her type music's more so like, I always explain, like Boston and like Styx, or she loves
Okay,
Prince.
but it's still classic
Um,
rock.
right, right, exactly, exactly. That was more her realm. She was like the lighter side of rock. My dad was more the heavier side of rock. So I had the best of both worlds.
Cool, cool. Do you have other
Yeah.
siblings, Jared?
Yeah, I have a brother and a sister. I'm the youngest.
Okay. What kind of music were they listening to as far as you remember when you were a little kid? Like when you were 6 years old and your dad was on the drums, what kind of music were your siblings listening to?
Man, I can't really remember, to be honest. Like pop. He's always like pop, and so that gets interesting with the Taylor Swift later on. But yeah, I mean pop. And my sister, honestly, I can't remember what she listened to. She was only 2 years older than me, so she was only 8.
Okay. Okay.
My
Do
brother's
you
6 years.
She picked up a little bit of the rock that your parents were listening to? Would that be the music that was playing around your house and your siblings also got to hear some of that?
My sister,
Yeah.
um, man, I don't think she ever really took to music too much, to be honest. She was always more of
Okay.
like an artsy type. But yeah, I mean, later down the line and down the years, I mean, she was. I always think of her when it comes to music like Paramore, or like
Okay.
Florence and the Machine and stuff like that, I guess.
Nice, nice. But she was also into music. Now, were any of your siblings ever into an instrument before you picked up the guitar?
Yeah, yeah. My played trombone in middle school and high school.
Okay.
Yeah, he did that. So he was always into music, and he dabbled with like keyboard and stuff too.
And now talk to me about the music that you remember that was coming either from the radio or from records around. Not what your dad was playing as far as with his band, but music that you could listen to. Was there a radio station or particular albums that your family or somebody in your family played for everybody to hear?
I remember younger, like I guess it was what was it, 93.3 The Bone? Was that what that was,
Yeah.
man? Yeah, it's not around anymore, I don't believe. Yeah, I mean they would always play that type station. So I remember a lot of Metallica, a lot of Pantera. That was a big one. And like I mentioned too, like a lot of Styx and Journey and like my mom, she liked the Prince stuff, Michael Jackson. I remember that, but that was really it. And I remember
Nice.
hearing one by Metallica, and that got me hooked for sure.
How do you remember hearing it? Was it on the radio? Because if you're born in '96, our first memories are usually from where we're 4 or 5 years old. You must have heard on the year 2000, and that's 12 years after that song was released.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, just driving in the car, stuff like that, man. I don't really know. Yeah, just basically driving around and whatever be on the radio. I mean, we had a pool whenever I was younger in elementary school, and house parties and all that type stuff that I mentioned already would be on the radio. So I just grew up
Cool,
around
cool.
all of it.
So let's continue moving forward then. So your dad, you wanted to begin jamming with him, if I understand correctly. Talk to me about the moment when you either asked for or you the opportunity to play the guitar for the first time, if you remember that.
So it's always kind of funny telling this story. It's kind of lame. So I'm sure you're familiar with the game Guitar Hero, and I'm sure
I
a
am
lot of
familiar
guys
with
have.
it, and I am lame at it.
You're not an expert, man.
Not at all. Not at all. I have an issue in my even pick up a real bass.
That's fair. That's
But
fair. Yeah.
I would never call a game that gets kids into playing to rock songs lame. And that's going to be our first disagreement of the evening. But go ahead and tell me the story of how you got into that lane about Guitar Hero.
It ended up being awesome, but just the story is kind of, I guess. But I picked up, I don't know, my parents or someone, I don't remember who got it for me, but my cousin Josh, he loved playing Guitar Hero, and so we kind of started playing the game together. We went to GameStop and got the guitars and the whole setup, and we just started playing that game one night, and we are hooked, just hooked. Those classic songs on there. And so we played that song that game for years and years. And I just kind of got to the point where it's like, man, well, I don't really enjoy this anymore. I want to know how to play the real thing. So then that's just kind of where that went.
Well, I gotta tell you that because I have played Guitar Hero, and that's as closest as I've ever felt to a rock star playing some instruments. Because when you play all those 8 notes in a row and you get the extra bonus points, I've actually been looking for a set, but they don't make them anymore to get my kids to play some of that. So I think it's a great story, and it shows the
Yeah.
potential of video games to steer kids into a certain direction. You
Yeah.
know,
I think it's
so
awesome.
I find it pretty exciting. What tracks do you remember being a master of in Guitar Hero? Because the good thing is that you have access to a variety of music. So what tracks do you remember that you particularly enjoyed on Guitar Hero? If you were at a party and you wanted to impress your friends, what was the track that you would pick to play in front of them?
Man, one by Metallica, like I said earlier, that was the song, man. Just like you start like, man, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Flare it. And I remember doing that at house parties too. Like my parents would have our family friends over or whatever, and be like, "Hey, check this out, man!" Like I'm just just going on the strum bar, and the star power pops up. I felt so cool. But that
You
was
remember
that
Star
was the
Power.
yeah, man, star power. That's where you feel like a god.
That's right. That's right. So because of that and the song One by Metallica, you were drawn to play the real thing. Do you recall that conversation for a guitar, how it went, and when did you end up buying it, or were there any conditions? I know that some kids end up having to work for it, either through their allowance or savings, or ask and have to wait until their birthday or Christmas. But how was your story with your first guitar?
So I remember I kept asking for one, and I ended up getting one for my birthday. I got it a little bit. They were like, "Ah, cool, go to the pawn shop." And I remember my dad specifically. He's like, "You're not getting an electric. You're not getting electric. You're gonna get an acoustic first because that's what you're supposed to do as being a beginner guitar player." because acoustics are harder to play, of course. And he kept saying that he was going to die on that hill. You're getting an acoustic, and so I ended up getting an electric.
Oh,
Starting
you
out,
ended up
but
getting an electric.
yeah, I talked him into it. I talked him into it.
Okay, that's great.
But yeah, um, but yeah, it was more so just like, hey, let's go to the pawn shop, and we went up there to, it was, what's that pawn shop called? It's over there off of 30. I think it's changed names since then. It's over there off like Broadway and 30. Um,
Oh yeah, I've been to that one a couple of times, and they had a pretty nice selection of instruments. As soon as you walk in, to your right, all the way to the
yes,
end of the wall next to the tools.
yep, yeah, right there. It actually moved. I went there the other week, a couple of weeks ago or so, and they moved it to the far wall now. But
Oh,
we went there, and there wasn't much of a selection. I didn't really like any of the guitars, to be honest, and it was just like, all right, well, we'll settle for that one. And I got a PV Raptor is what my first guitar was. I still have it upstairs. Um, but yeah, and then I got a crate combo. One is a 112, I believe. Piece of crap. But
okay. Why was it a piece of crap?
man, you so the reverb channel on it, right? You put the
Uh
reverb
huh.
all the way up to like, you get about five, and it would give you the reverb sound, and it makes you feel more confident, I guess, whenever you're playing. And you would bump it up a little bit more, and you would go to 10, and it would start this obnoxious feedback noise. I don't know what it was, but the tiniest little detail that you did to it, if you turn the volume up too much, it would start making a weird sound. It was like the speaker was blown or something. I don't know, but it was
Mm-hmm.
it didn't sound very well either. Getting it home, we got it home, and I just had a cable, a power cord, and the amp and the guitar, and there's no distortion at all. And me thinking of
And that's
like
what you were looking
Metallica.
for.
Yes, I was like, oh man, I'm gonna plug this thing in, and it's just gonna freaking rip my face off. No, this clean
No.
channel, this clean channel. That was disappointing, but
Yeah.
we went up to we went to another pawn shop down the street, and I got a Boss Metal Zone pedal, and that did the trick for a year or so. But yeah, I mean,
Okay.
that was essentially it.
So you began playing, then you decided you needed distortion. How about coming together with your own band? You mentioned that at one point you jammed with your dad. Do you recall some of those moments? Was it just you and him, or how did it come about that the first times that you jammed, whether with him or with a group of friends?
So it was, we lived at a house in Garland, and I remember my, obnoxiously large. It was like it's like they knocked a wall down or something. I don't know. It was like two bedrooms in one essentially, but he had a drum set in there, and so I remember I had a big, at that point it was a couple of years down the line, but I had a huge line 6 combo amp or whatever, and I remember we started jamming doing that. And the first thing, randomly enough, that I remember jamming with my dad at least, and I'm pretty sure that that was the first time that I had actually jammed with a drummer or anything like that, was we were playing Nickelback. We were playing like Animals by Nickelback. I don't know, for some reason that's the song that sticks.
Okay, so you're playing Animals by Nickelback, and who was there in the room with you? Was only your dad and you, or was it somebody else
No,
singing along?
it was just him and I. We just instrumental. That's or, well, no bass player. It's just guitar and drums. That was it.
What about your siblings? Didn't they get interested in joining in?
No, 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 no. At that point, my sister, I think she was she was out, you know, doing whatever and stuff. So she had her own car and all that fun stuff. Um,
Okay. So you were
but
the one
yeah,
that basically stayed at home and rehearsing and playing with that. Now, talk to me about growing up from that stage of playing at home and deciding to find a group of folks to jam. You must have built a pretty solid confidence into what you were doing, to be wanting to go to shows and wanting to befriend the guys in the bands and eventually end up working with them. It seemed, or at least the way you said it at first, it seemed like it was
yeah.
something that you were actually focused on. But what were the first experiences that you had jamming with a group of friends, Jared?
It was always like, I guess a couple of years into me playing, I would have family members like, "Oh, you need to join a band. You need to join a band." I'm like, "Who? I don't know. Like, I don't know anybody." I remember, you know, there's some websites. There's like Bandmate or some stuff like that. I would try that out, and just no luck. Just no luck. It would be people that you would talk to, but No luck really. The first time I ever jammed with someone that was actually my age, I remember it was this kid named Trevor. He lived down the street from me, and he wasn't a very good influence and stuff. But yeah, he was a good guitar player. He's a great guitar player, and he I remember him. He loved Metallica. I love Metallica, so I was like, hey man, you should come over, and we'd jam in the garage. But it was just two guitar players, no drummer still. So it was still like, all right, this is not what this needs to be. But we jammed a few times, and then eventually it just kind of set with me in my bedroom. And just like there's nothing to do really. But then I remember going to whenever I met the Revengeance guys, they were opening up for Dio Disciples. I don't know if you remember when they went on tour with River
The
Islands.
correct. The former members that had played along with Dio at one point in the career, they decided
Yeah.
to go out and tour. Now, before you got to that show, which seemed to have been transcendental, what happened around you that you discovered that besides just listening to the songs at home, you could go to shows? And because again, a lot of kids, especially now, since you're only 26 years old, I'm surprised that 10 years ago you were still wanting to go to shows when you're 15. I don't see that many kids around shows, especially nowadays. Do you have
Yeah.
friends that you could go with? Was there a friend who told you about the shows, or how did this happen that you were aware of the shows and then told your parents to take you to those shows?
So most of those shows, believe it or not, were my parents or aunt, uncle, or whoever taking me to those shows. It wasn't really. I mean, I wasn't more of like a. I wasn't a huge popular kid or anything like that. It was more so family, like my dad or whoever that would take me to. I remember going to my first show that I ever went to was with some close family friends of ours. First show I ever saw was man, what was it? Night Ranger in what's the other band? Kansas, Kansas.
Okay.
That was the first show I ever went to. So that was a family friend type thing, and it was at the Wildflower Festival. I can't remember what year it was, but that just kind of happened to be a one off. Like, hey, we're gonna go to this festival thing. I had no idea what it was,
Uh
and
huh.
we ended up going to that show. I can't remember what year that was to be exact, but I remember seeing that, and Brad Gillis is up there just killing it. I'm like, oh my god, like that is so cool. So I remember that. My
It seemed
dad
that it
took
would
me
have
to.
been in the year 2009. From what I found
Uh,
online, it was in the year 2000. You were 13 years old.
yeah, so that was a year into me playing guitar, and then imagine seeing
Okay.
Brad Gillis up there just kill it. Like
Wow.
thinking about it, yeah, that sounds right. Um, but yeah, that, and then my dad took me to see Iron Maiden a couple of times after that, and seeing those guys. I'm sure. Have you seen Iron Maiden before?
No, and you shouldn't have put me on the spot like that because it's one of the bands that everybody seems to love. And it's one of the bands that I never got into. The reason I never got
Okay,
into them
fair
is
enough.
because in '82, when they hit big, I was 7 years old. Loved the album, The Number of the Beast, but I was too scared to have it around. And then I began hearing all these myths about their imagery. By the time I turned 13, I began building my own record collection. I had gotten into heavier stuff. So for some reason, even man, there's not a day that I talk to a musician that they don't mention how important Iron Maiden has been, and how hard it is for me to say sorry. I got into them.
Hey
I
man,
probably, I mean, I have the records, but I could not tell you the name of 10 songs by them. The albums I do, but no. But I imagine it was an incredible experience for you because if you saw them on the year, I don't know, 2010, they were already touring with the three guitars and back to touring arenas, and some of those were their back somewhere back in time tours with the greatest hits being played. What do you remember about those shows, Jared?
man, I just remember being blown away by the musicians. I mean, like you have all those guys that are just so talented. I mean, again, playing guitar for a year or two, even it's like, oh my god, how can I do that? How do they do that? It just kind of blows you away. They start blowing into the Trooper and or the Number of the Beast or whatever song it may be. I mean, just being blown away, honestly. But yeah, Iron Maiden, and then I
Did you
saw
have a lot of familiarity with them?
um like style wise and stuff like that.
No, more like were you already aware of all the songs? Because you said that your dad took you up to this
Yeah.
moment. You had mentioned several bands, especially
Right.
Metallica, but you had not mentioned that you were listening a lot of Iron Maiden. So I don't know if your dad took you and it was a discovery for you to see Iron Maiden live, or if you're already familiar with the music.
Oh no, I was already familiar, very, very familiar with it. Yeah, I went in fully expecting, not expecting all that, but as far as the material, yeah, I knew that. I knew most of it at least.
Okay.
Um,
I think then you were gonna tell me which other shows you recall going to right after Iron Maiden, and as usual, I would love for you to tell me who do you go to because what I'm fascinated in your story is the incredible positive influence that the family can have into your music choices. You're making me very proud of taking my own kids to concerts because eventually they'll
yeah,
probably be like you and want to pick up the guitar. But
yeah,
go
and I
ahead,
see.
talk to me about the shows that you remember afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Motley Crue and Poison. They came to town one time. That was cool. Vince and his voice, it's not the best anymore, but that was awesome. Be able to see Mick Mars do what he does. That was amazing. And both of my parents took me to this one. They took me to see Ozzy at American Airlines Center. I can't remember what year it was, but
Wow.
Slash opened up for him. So there's another guitar god. Um, and then Miles Kennedy was singing for him at that point. But you have Slash, and then on tour for Ozzy at that point was Gus G. So I was a big, big Zach Wild guy, right? And so whenever we happened to see him on that tour, I was a little bummed. I was a little bummed, but Gus
Uh
G
huh.
still killed it. But then after that, man, it was. I remember I went to my mom won tickets on the radio to see Def Leppard.
Hold
So we
on.
saw.
So you're about 16, and I mean, even if your mom had you at 18, she must have been in her mid 30s, and she's still calling radio stations and trying to win tickets. That's a cool story, man. You
Yeah.
gotta tell me a little bit about what your mom likes for music because it's great to imagine somebody in their mid 30s with kids already teenagers and still trying to get tickets from a radio station. Your parents must love music still to this
Yeah.
day.
Oh yeah, yeah, they do. I mean, they it was always they all love music, but my mom, man, as far as why I'm laughing is because as far as calling the radio, she would always do that, any and everything. She's probably gotten to the radio through to them like 3 or 4 times, at least.
Wow.
Um, but yeah, I mean, as far as music with her, like the people that I've already mentioned, uh, and I don't know. My mom's she just kind of goes with the flow as far as music goes. So I mean, if there's something on the radio, she'll listen to anything. I remember
Let me ask you something. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah,
You remember she took your brother. Keep going.
she took my brother and sister to Gwen Stefani, and that was another one I'm pretty sure she won on the radio. so
Wow.
so she kind of goes all over the
So,
genre
so,
of
so, so
listening.
what I want to jump ahead a bit, and I don't want to stay there too long. But was your mother
Yeah.
then who introduced you to Taylor Swift?
No, no, not at all. So I guess the first time I had ever heard Taylor Swift, we were at a family friend's. Uh, I can't remember whose house it was, but I'm pretty sure it was Our Song came on, or it
Mm-hmm.
was Our Song. It was one of her really early hits that came on, and I
Mm-hmm.
remember just being like, "Man, that's catchy," but I don't know. Being a guy that's like loves metal and stuff like that, I'm like, I'm not gonna like that crap, people. I just remember kind of keeping it in the back of my head. But there was that.
The On the radio, or was it being played from a record? Because that's a 2007 single from her 2006 album, and
Uh,
if you must have been 11 when you heard it, if it was on the radio. If it was from a
yeah,
record, that record became popular over the next 2 years. So you could have been up to 13 and already playing the guitar.
I think it was. I want to say it was a music video, and I could be wrong on that song. I just remember hearing of Taylor Swift. It was just a music video.
Hmm.
They had like whatever channel was on, and we weren't really watching it. It was just more so on in the background. I kind of turned my head and like, huh, okay,
But it caught your
um,
attention, right? There was something about it
right.
that clicked. That it seemed
Yeah, it was just catchy. I was like, man, she's got a voice that's great melodies. The instrumentals, like, this isn't half bad. But yeah,
Yeah.
I just remember letting that sit in the back of my head for a little while, and then the next instance that I remember of Taylor Swift is I knew you were trouble. I believe is what it was. So this is
Yeah, that's probably
2012.
like 5 years later.
Yeah. So it's like I didn't really dive into Taylor Swift. I just remember hearing of her, and that was whenever she was slowly getting more and more popular.
Yeah.
And now she's just huge. But I remember I knew Your Trouble came on, and it was on an award show of some sort. And so she was performing it live, and I remember
Okay.
watching that and hearing the chorus and just whatever she did there. I was like, man, this is just freaking catchy. This is just good stuff. Um,
Yeah.
but then at that point, that was the instance. And then at that point, I was like, you know what? This is just good stuff. I'm gonna die. What's going on here? So I remember I was spending the night at my brother's house, and this is whenever it was like, all right, Taylor Swift is game on. Um, my brother was at work, and I was staying at his house for a few days, and I got on the computer and I started listening to the whole Red album,
Okay.
and I just loved it. I loved every single song on it. There was not one that I didn't like. And so my brother got home, and I was like, dude, stop what you're doing, listen to this like right now. And so he was like, "Oh my god!" And so we just were listening to Taylor Swift nonstop from that point on,
Nice. And by
basically.
then you're probably 18 years old. And the interesting thing is by then she became so popular and so big that some of the backlash began. Because within
Yeah.
country she had gone a little bit pop, and in pop she had become too popular. So
Hmm.
that album caught fire. I remember that was
Yeah.
what broke her into the mainstream and into the MTV Music Video Awards and all of that. But it was
Yeah.
within a year that there was some backlash. That it happens to almost any artist. How was it
Yeah.
playing out for you? Because by then you're 18. I imagine you were not in high school anymore. How did it play out
No.
amongst your friends who already knew you as a guitar player that loved rock and metal? If you mentioned that you were so much falling in love into the Red album.
Man, I want to say I was so if Red came out in 2012, I want to say I was around 16, 17 around then.
Okay.
Um, and so I remember just I got a lot of crap for it. I got a lot of crap for it. Like family friends, like you like Taylor Swift, and I still do. But do I care? No, absolutely not. I just
Good.
kind of I shake it off, if you will.
Listen,
But
if somebody tune in later, I am wearing a Taylor Swift shirt out of the half a dozen that I own because my daughter owns like 20. So every now and then I
there you
buy
go.
one along. And you said it perfectly. We just have to shake it off, man. It's not going to
Exactly,
hurt our
exactly.
reputation.
I remember having a lot of people be like, "Oh, really? Like, come on, man! Just like, oh, she sucks or whatever." I was like, "I don't care, man. It's just catchy." But I remember showing it to the guys in Revengeance, like Taylor and Dewey and Duke and stuff. And I remember Duke was like, "Dude, that's trash." And but then Dewey and Taylor, they always listen to like Hollywood Undead, and like Taylor loves everything, and he loves like Adam Lambert and stuff like that. So I knew, okay, if I bring Taylor Swift to these guys, they're gonna probably like it, and of course they did. So they kind of jumped on that train. Um,
Cool.
yeah,
Cool. It's basically appreciating music for what it is because when I was
right.
discovering hard rock, Def Leppard to me was as heavy as could be before I went on to discover other stuff like Anthrax. But then
Right.
I remember the year 1991 and one band that I absolutely fell in love with, although maybe people wouldn't call it a band but a group, it was Wilson Phillips. And Wilson Phillips is still one of my favorites. They wrote all the
Okay.
music and the lyrics for that album, and it's just three girls singing harmonies, and they sing
Huh.
incredibly beautiful in a way that I'm a fan of them. I still listen to that debut album from '91. I get all their CDs and records, even when they've done separate projects, because good music is good music.
Right.
And the interesting thing to me is that you play in Reputation. You're the guitar player for Reputation, the tribute to Taylor Swift that I've
Uh huh.
seen you guys perform live. From the very first time that I saw you at Amplified, I was noticing you. There's Charlotte Franklin, I believe her last name, who
Yeah,
plays like
Charlotte
three or
Franklin. Yeah.
four or five instruments and does incredible backing vocals and does the
Oh yeah.
fiddle. So she caught my eye because of the diversity of instruments. But there was something in you that told me this guy must be a rocker. So I recall
Yeah.
then going to see your band again recently, as you started a new phase in your career with a new singer. I was very curious to see you play again, and there you were, and I'm like, this guy must be a rocker. And up to that moment, I didn't know. So I reached
Yes.
out to you to talk about Taylor Swift, the Reputation Taylor Swift tribute, and I was still believing that you were a country guitar player because I had no idea of your metal background. And all of a sudden, you begin mentioning original bands like Dreamkeeper and Revengeance, and I'm like, what in the world? Those are the heavy metal bands that I heard from the other side of the aisle,
Right.
the hard
Right.
rocking dude. So it was a great discovery for me to learn that about you, Jared, because I always thought of you for at least for a year. This is a country guitar player with a rock edge, but I never
Right.
imagined all that. So now let's begin to tie those stories together and talk to me about how you being a music fan who attends local shows when you are underage. And I love the part that your parents drove you to shows, man. For any of those
Yeah.
parents that may be listening, it's just a great story what you're sharing because it shows how we can share such important activities like going to concerts, and kids find so much in that. In your case, it has
Yeah.
to a performer and to a producer. Why don't we begin connecting the both stories where you are now playing rock shows, Taylor Swift tribute shows with a rock edge to, and how it all started from just going to rock concerts and then evolving into participating in those rock bands. Please go ahead and tell me that story of how you went from attending shows to getting involved with bands like Revengeance and those guys.
So how it started with that is like again going to the shows and stuff, and then it kind of trickled into, hey man, you should get up here and play a song. Like, and Taylor showed me how to play a few of their songs. It's like, hey man, like show me how to play this and that. And we would go out back of O'Reilly's and he'd be like, oh yeah, you do this and this and blah blah blah. And so I would learn songs, which is so cool of him. You know, I can't be I couldn't think of enough for that. And um, it kind of just learn their songs on my own uh, and then it just kind of became a, hey man, jump on stage and let's perform this song. And so I can't remember what song it was or what we did. Oh, light bulb. So back to that cover that I talked to you about, the My Curse Kill Switch Engage, if you're
Mm-hmm.
familiar with that song. So we recorded that cover and then we put it out on YouTube and all that. And that was the kind of the segue into all that is we were like, hey, let's perform My Curse live. So then I started to go up on stage with them and I would take whoever's guitar. I can't remember exactly if it was Taylor or Dewey, but I would take one of their guitars and we started playing that song. And so that's kind of how that was. And that we did that for months and probably even maybe a year. It was just, that's all it was. Which I was fine with. I was like, man, this is awesome. I get to go up on stage and play this song that I love with my friends. And basically, it went from we went. They asked me to guitar tech for
Before
them.
you go to the next step, did you
Yeah.
meet them and became friends only at shows?
So yeah, I met them, and then it was more so I reached out to Taylor. We would talk here and there.
But
And
you met
then
him at a rock concert, correct?
yes, yeah, the Dio Disciple show is where I met all of those guys, and that was at Trees, whichever year that was. And so, yeah, I mean, from that point, and then it was like, okay, I would only see them at shows. To your
Tell
point,
me a little bit about how you met him because to me that's also a fascinating part of the story because I
yeah,
myself 14, 15 months ago I had never gone to a tribute show. When I went to see you at Amplified, it was probably my fourth tribute show. And it's incredible that the great dynamics of the community when musicians are playing shows and at the end of it they come and say hello. That was one of the more important memories that my daughters have of your show. Of course you had Lauren, a different singer at the time, but the guys
right,
in all the rock bands are able and willing to take pictures with people. When I went to the Reputation show, I said hello to Charla, and she was incredibly kind. And to me, this is like a musical goddess. I had just seen her play like
right,
five, six instruments incredibly well on songs that I love. And then she's, "Hi, I'm Charla," and she's taking pictures with you and all that.
right. The
Now,
sweetest, the sweetest
I
person.
the sweetest person, and the same with the rock guys. You have guitar for like an hour playing your favorite songs live, and then they come up stage and begin saying hello. So it's to me
Right.
one of the things that we should appreciate more by being encouraging to everything these guys do, whether in tribute or originals. But
Uh,
I would love for you to share how you connected with them and talked to them after just going to a show.
Man, I'm really shy when it comes to like going up to people like that, and I always have been. Like if I go to I don't know, meet and greet, I'm always just like, oh, nice to meet you, cool autograph, and I leave, I run. But I basically did the same thing with them. I went to their merch table and I had bought the tickets off of Taylor actually, because you know how bands will sell their tickets on the side
Yeah.
because they get credit for it. And so I bought the tickets off of Taylor, and it was a just wham bam. Here's the money. Here's the tickets. Cool. See you at the show, man. Like have a good show, and that was about it. And then I remember they played their set. We went to the merch table, and it was more like, oh, good set, and like it was only Taylor really at that point that I knew, and then all the other guys that I didn't really know at all. But it was just literally here, sign this poster, sign that poster, and I left. That was really it as far as that first show went. Just because there was a lot of people there, and
Yeah.
yeah, they're getting overwhelmed, and I know how that feels now, but I didn't then. But just like to your point, I didn't know any of those guys, and I'm like, oh my god, played trees, and there's so many people here. These guys are like famous or something, you know, like in my head, man, this is crazy. But yeah, I just basically got myself and bounced really that first
Wow.
show.
Okay. And how did it evolve from there to becoming closer and closer to them as a band?
Then it kind of like O'Reilly's kind of came into play there, because that's more of a intimate, just kind of hangout spot. You know, it's just a bar, and
Hmm.
the stage is right there. Trees, on the other hand, is a little bit different. They have a green room upstairs, and you can be more secluded away from the crowd as a band. But O'Reilly's, you don't really get that. You're kind of out in the open. So
Yeah.
um, that's kind of how it started. I was just go to shows and the stuff like I already mentioned, like, hey, show me how to play this part of the song, and
So
like, all right,
how
yeah,
do you, but see, when you say it, it seems easy. You just approach the musician that's been there and you say, "Hey, show me how to play this part." But you just describe yourself as shy. A little bit earlier, you said that you were not very popular in school. So I understand that. It seems that you could be considered a person
yeah,
who is an introvert, which is
right,
perfectly fine. How do
yeah.
you find this? It must be something incredibly important to you to be able to play those things in guitar, for you to break all those natural aspects of your personality, shyness, introversion, and go up to these guys and even ask for
Right,
something, you
right.
know? Because
Well,
you're not just
yeah,
saying, hey, can I take a picture?
yeah.
You're saying, can you show me how to play this on guitar?
It's like, hey, give me your tabs right now. No, no, I guess I explained it poorly. I'm not the best at explaining it, but I would talk to Taylor on social media a lot, right? And so I
Okay.
guess I don't know if I kind of had a relationship with him, I guess an online relationship, like you and I, for instance. Like we haven't talked too much like one on one, but you know, it's kind of like this situation, not necessarily on video chat, but we would text a lot, and so I
Yeah,
would
and
feel
for the record,
comfortable
I want to say
essentially.
this on the record. I remember reading and seeing a lot about Mr. Taylor Dennis online, and I
Mhm.
was very curious to see him. Then I click on his profile picture, and he is obviously a concert where incredibly lining and all that. And like, this guy is like a rock star, and everything that he posts, there's a lot of interaction from people from many local and even nationally known bands. So then I
Yeah.
went to a show at Amplified at the Inside Stage. I didn't know he was going to be playing there because he was subbing for the band Crude and Tattoo. He was playing bass that night,
Oh, okay.
and he's not their official bass player. So I approached him, and I didn't know yet in which bands he played.
Mhm.
And we were not even Facebook friends. I approached him and said hello, and I mentioned this podcast as I was already planning about it. And I said it'd be great to get a guy like Taylor Dennis on the show, and I'm hoping
Yeah,
actually to get him in the month of August. He was
you'll have
incredibly
plenty of
kind to
stories.
me. You know, he said, you know, man, of course, sure, but you know what? This is not actually my main band. I have another tribute. I said, oh, you do have another tribute? Yeah, which one? It's called Def Legend. I'm like, Def Legend. I've heard posts and I've seen pictures, and those guys per month, and they play in venues with thousands of players. I'm like, oh
Yeah,
my gosh!
they
So I
stay
couldn't
busy.
imagine a bass player who plays at bigger venues in a rock band than him. And then he begins telling me, but that's not my only band. And he gives me a list of like seven bands that he's involved in.
Yeah, yeah,
And yet, through all of that, he finds the time to respond to messages, to say hello, and to just, I mean, every time that I send him something, he would share because he loves the music, and I think by consequence, he loves to talk to music fans,
yeah.
like I am, and like you were at the time. You're no longer a music fan; you're now part of the scene as a guitar player. So I imagine that as that relates. evolved, you found then the confidence to reach out to him. How did it go from asking him tips on guitar to actually being in a band with him and playing guitar and touring with him?
So I went to. They asked me to guitar tech for them. They went on tour in the summer of 20, and I was 17, and so I remember doing that, and we. So I spent a long, long time with them, and then that was kind of the
First
tail.
question. First, let me stop you, Jared. I'm so sorry. I keep interrupting you,
You're
but you
fine. You're
begin saying
fine.
a story with incredibly nice details. How do your parents feel when you told them that you were going to go on tour as a guitar tech and you're just 17?
My mom was cool with it. My mom was really cool with it. My dad was kind of pissed, but he was like, I trust your judgment because like he looks at it like, oh, my little boy's going on tour with all these older guys, and like he didn't really. My dad didn't really know them. I mean, they don't really they haven't really hung around them and stuff like I have. And so my dad's just kind of going off like, oh, these older guys, like I don't know if what they're into and blah blah blah. And so he's just being a parent, right? And so I was like, Dad,
Correct.
just
And you're the
trust me.
youngest. I mean, we have to keep in
Right,
mind you're the youngest child, and the other two haven't explored music like you have. So
right.
it's a big deal for a 17-year-old to say, I'm going to go on tour
Yeah,
with a rock band.
yeah, it's a little steep. It's a little steep, but they ended up giving me the go. I remember, I don't even know if I want to say my grandma gave me like $300 and was like, "Here, use this to survive for a month," or whoever it was. I remember it was $300. I want to say or $200, and I just kind of had to survive off that for a month with just food. But they were
Okay.
cool about it. They're
I
cool.
don't want to put the band on the spot. So that means that the band was not even feeding you?
Well, I mean, it was kind of they. I don't
I
want
know,
to.
I know. We're talking about bands that are just, working hard to promote the music. It's not like you're gonna have
Right,
a per diem and a large stipend, but
right.
you
Like,
had to you had to tell your family, I'm gonna go out on touring a band. I'm gonna be doing all of these things for them, but bottom line is, I need money for my food.
right. Basically, man. I mean, but I like Taylor and all them. They told me they're like, look, man, you can for food because I mean, local or bands like that that aren't known and stuff. It's hard. It's
It
really
is. It
hard.
is hard. Even the bands that have sold millions of records talk to before they have a record deal. That's how it goes.
Yeah,
Or even when they have a record deal, they barely get like $20 from the record label per day. So yeah, it's a
yeah,
hard life, and that's one of the, to me, it's one of the most important things that people, I wish they know more, because sometimes we see you and we think they're getting paid a lot of money, they're doing so well that it's okay for me to criticize what they do, because they're making a lot of money, they must be having a posh hotel, and they're going to be getting the best meal in town. So it's
right.
okay for me to talk trash about how I didn't like this song, or how did this didn't sound right. And the fascinating thing that I've known for a while, because I read, especially tribute scene, is just regular guys doing their best, pursuing what they love, and
Right.
spread the joy of what it means to others like myself to see live music. So let's go back to that story of you being a 17-year-old going on tour. Your grandma took care of you, your parents gave you permission. How was that process? Have you been out of town many times before? Have you been to other cities? Have you even traveled
the
without your parents?
I had been prior to that. I had been like to DC, Pittsburgh,
So you
Florida.
had been to big cities before, and,
Yeah,
and, and you were
yeah.
not very uncomfortable going to other places.
No, no. I wasn't scared at all. I was excited.
And
Um,
how about traveling without your parents? How did that feel? Because one thing is to go on a trip with peers who are your age and share your interests and maybe your insecurities, but you're going with older people that, to you, even though the age difference may be about 5 to 8 years, you're
yeah,
17, they're 25. In that stage in life, it's a huge difference. So how did
very.
it go for you?
Well, so some of the guys in the bands were only like 3 years older than years, and I think Duke was the oldest. And I'm still like that's one of my best friends now, and he played at the time he was their screaming vocalist, but he's like 32 or so. He's like 6 7 years older than me, so it was like 3 to 7 years of people older than me. But um, I don't remember being scared at all. But the biggest obstacle there was I didn't get my license until I was 18, so I'm 17 years old. I didn't have an ID or anything of that sort, and so I'm like, okay, I'm traveling across the country. I need an ID. So that was a little scary, but I did that. I did get the ID and all that fun stuff, but that was the only thing I was really nervous about, to be honest. I was ready.
And how did it for you? Because again, you also have to have a lot of confidence in yourself, Jared, to be able to get the guitar ready and have a backup ready. I mean, explain to me what a guitar tech does when you're on tour. Because we've seen it, we've seen the names, and I'm hoping to reach out through this podcast a lot of people who are not necessarily insiders in the industry, not necessarily just musicians, but regular family people like myself who want to bring kids to their shows. Explain to me what a guitar tech does. When they told you want to be coming on the road with us as a guitar tech, what did you imagine it would be, and how did it turn out to be?
It was basically what I had been doing locally with them. But I mean, essentially, you just want to make sure their guitars are good, their all the strings are good, the guitar's tuned, they have all the proper cables they need, the amps are set up, they're on the right tones, whatever it may be, they're in the right spot of the stage because like the bass player might want to be stage right or stage left, etc. But just making sure that's the consistent thing every night. But I mean, that's what a guitar tech's responsible for. I mean, as far as with the Revengeance guys, I wouldn't say it was. They didn't sit there like, all right, little kid, just go over there and set my stuff up. They weren't like that at all. I mean, I was just more so kind of like I'm an extra hand on stage, so it wasn't really to the. I mean, they strung their own guitars for the most part. I was just more so responsible for if something went wrong on stage, like when they're playing. If a guitar string were to break, I'm right there to give them the backup. I'm just an extra hand in that instance. And
I
then tear
see.
down, loading stuff up in the trailer.
Okay, now that's another aspect of the touring life that it's a hard thing to because I've read even the biggest stars say how hard it is because you have 2 hours of incredible excitement playing the songs. You have a couple of hours after the show where you get to meet people and wind down, and you have 2 to 3 or 4 hours maybe before where you're setting up, doing sound check and everything. That's
Mm.
probably 7 hours in a day. For a 17-year-old like you going to all these different cities, how was the rest of the day?
Man, a lot of it was boring. It's kind of boring. Because I don't know, you get to the venue around sound check, maybe what, 4, just depending. Yeah, you do sound check, and then you just kind of you have 2, 3 hours, whatever it may be, of downtime. So you just kind of sit in the green room and hang out, sit on your phone, go on social media, or maybe walk down to a restaurant or whatever fast food. Only having $300, it was more so McDonald's. um, I remember we were in Louisville, Kentucky. We walked down to some record stores and just whatever we could do to kill time, really.
Now,
I,
you were hanging out with the guys in Revengeance then.
right, right.
I imagine that allows you to build a very solid friendship because regardless of the age difference, you're hanging around each other all the time. Yet at the same time, it allows you to be exposed into this world of peers who are older and learn a lot. What do you think that were the biggest learnings that came to you from that experience that you've noticed other people haven't gotten yet or got much later in life and yet you were getting at age 17?
Man, that's a deep one for sure. I would say more so. Man, I'm not sure. Like as far as like just looking at them of their age and compared to like looking at it now, that's just crazy to me as far as like not working your job for a month and being able to pay the bills and stuff like that. I respect the hell out of them for that because I don't know. I couldn't do that right now. There's no way. So I mean, looking back on things like that's commendable, and I respect that.
You mean
But
organizing yourself and having the drive to leave the job on the side for a month and pursuing this dream of playing music for life or for a living?
yeah. I mean, like they definitely had the passion and everything, but it's just more so like financially. It's like, how the hell did they do that? Because when you're playing shows, you're making. I don't remember exactly what they were making a night, but some nights would be good, some nights would suck. And I remember one
Yeah.
night that the promoters basically threatened to just cancel the show. Or like, yeah, no, we're not playing anymore. Like, get lost basically. So, I guess looking at that to answer that question, I mean, the best I can really is just res- respecting that as far as there's their drive and being able to do that financially and in the
Now,
vehicle that we
Jared,
did it. Yeah.
when you're talking about what that at age 17, doesn't it pull
Mhm.
the veil off this whole idea of fame and fortune that sometimes we associate with rock musicians, and not just
Yeah,
rock, but any kind
yeah,
of musicians?
right.
What made you continue to pursue it? Because in a way, with much more control. And by that I mean you've been holding on to a full time job and not necessarily going on the road for months. But what made you continue to pursue the desire to participate in music as much as you could with as much time and investment when you had seen that eventually you don't become rich of it?
I love playing guitar, man. There's just it's therapy almost. Like, you start playing guitar and you start playing songs you love or songs you've written, and that's what it is. It's just a passion. It just burns inside of you. You're just like, man, you could have the worst day possible. Every single thing, everyone's screaming at you, hates you, whatever. Like, you could just be in the gutter, but you pick up a guitar or whatever instrument you play, and that just makes your day, or like it just puts you in this spot where it's like, okay, everything's fine. I don't care about any of that. Like, that's what it is. It's just that burning passion.
That's
Like,
a
you don't
beautiful
you don't
word that you
care.
chose first.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a
yeah. You don't
beautiful word
care
that you
about
chose.
anything.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Keep interrupting. You don't care about anything. Keep going.
No, no. I mean, that's what it is, man. I mean, like, you don't really care about the money or the how am I gonna get from this city or to this. To be fair, I mean, that's the only tour I ever went on, but I'm not gonna sit here and say, oh, I've been here and everywhere, but um, it's just that stuff doesn't matter. Like, or if we play a show or we don't get a good payout, like, I don't care, man. Like, I just like playing the music, and I just like being there. And to the first band that I was in, we didn't make a single dime ever, and so that was enough for me to just be able to play in front of people. It's just what I love
Hmm.
to do. It's it's fun. It's
Now,
just
what happened after Revengeance? Because after you went on tour with them, then you
yeah.
move on to new roles into a new band, if I'm not mistaken, again with Taylor Dennis. Talk to me about the bands that follow and how did that process go?
Um, so yeah, I mean, to lightning storm through the Revengeance thing. After that tour ended, um, two of the guys lived in Minnesota, and then so the band was kind of falling apart. Really, I don't remember exactly what was happening, but they needed fill-ins, or they needed some guys to play some shows, and so I filled in for bass for them for Revengeance for a few shows. I don't remember exactly how many, but on the tail end of there, when they were just trying to keep things going, because these were shows that were already prior booked, I played bass for them, and then at that point, the two guys up in Minnesota, they weren't going to come down to this certain month or whatever it was, and so the guys kind of just got bored and like, hey man, like let's make a cover band or something. Let's just play like a bunch of songs. So then we started a band that only lasted like maybe 2-3 shows. It was called When All Else Fails, which was kind of a funny name because Revengeance was failing, and like, oh, screw it, when all else fails, let's just do a cover band, and that's just kind of how that started. But I play guitar for that band, and we played, like Godsmack or All That Remains, stuff like that, Killswitch Engage. We did that for a few shows, and then I think Revengeance was just kind of and it was just kind of done at that point. Um,
Hmm.
what I remember, I could be wrong, and Taylor could be watching this and be like, "You idiot," but that was that. And then Taylor and I were like, "Hey, let's start another band." And then some guys split off, and so I remember it was me, Taylor, and Dewey. Those three guys, or those two guys, Taylor and Dewey, were in Revengeance, and then myself, and so us three, we were like, "Hey, let's start a new band." So we started a band called Frame the Enemy. Um, and that was like kind of like a metal, like post-hardcore ish band where it was like half screaming, half singing vocals. And so we started that band, and we did that for, I don't know, probably maybe half a year, or at least I did. I'm pretty sure Taylor went on to do that for years, but I was with them for about 6-ish, 7 months. I can't remember exactly, but we did that, played some cool shows, got to open up for some national touring acts, which was cool. Did we get paid for them? Absolutely
Hmm.
not. But that was cool. And so that kind of just got me, that kind of got my feet moving as far as playing shows in my own bands. So I guess Frame the Enemy would be that band. That would be my first technical band. And then I quit that band. Just I don't remember exactly why, but just a lot of differences and stuff. Like there'd be a
So
lot
by
of
the time you are
differences and
quitting
stuff.
Frame the Enemy, 20 years old?
No, man. So that was actually so Frame the Enemy. I quit that band when I was God. The timeline's pretty jacked up here, but I was about 17, 18. I want to say I was about 18, 17 or
Oh, so
18
you joined
whenever.
it right after the end of the tour and it ended pretty swiftly right afterwards. So you were still in high school.
Yeah, yeah, basically. But yeah,
Hey,
it was like 17, 18 or so.
let me ask you something. You have said you were not very popular and didn't make a lot of friends in school. How did the
Right.
people that learned that you had gone on tour and were playing shows at local venues ever react when they learn about that? Because to me that'd be the coolest thing. I know rock music, especially at
Yeah.
that time of I mean in the 2005 maybe wasn't the most popular thing in the world, but it's still an incredible accomplishment for a senior to be able to do what you were doing. How did that play out socially for you? Did it allow you to build a stronger network of friends or fans even?
All. Not at all. No, I mean, it just wasn't really a thing that was talked about, to be honest. I just kind of kept to myself. So yeah,
Oh
and
wow.
to answer that, yeah, not really at all. I didn't have much friends in school, so I just kind of kept to myself. But yeah, to your point, that would make like oh, guy's cool. He went to all over the U.S. and stuff. But no, not really. Not really. But yeah, it was like 17, 18 or so on that end of
Now
the Frame
let
the
tell
Enemy thing.
tell me a little bit how you went from Frame the Enemy to the next band, because if I'm not mistaken, then you were already taking on the role of producer, correct?
Yeah, so with Frame the Enemy, I would always record our demos and stuff like that, and that's just kind of how it started. Is like, hey, Jared's got a MacBook and he's got an interface and he's got the software to do it, and so that was kind of something that I had done as far as just recording our stuff. It was just purely out of convenience, purely out of convenience. And before that, when I was younger, I had a piece of crap computer that I would record on and just do covers. And I have some sound files that are probably dated even, but it was just dabbling around recording covers. But then once I actually started taking it seriously as far as songwriting and producing, it was the Frame the Enemy stuff, and uh, it got from that, and then I left Frame the Enemy, and then I started another band with Duke, which was well, also in Revengeance. He had been away from Frame the Enemy and Revengeance probably, I don't know, 6 months, a year or so at that point. And so we started a band called The Vanity Affair. And then that was another one's like, all right, cool. Jared's got the computer. Let's record the demos. And so that's it. It was purely out of convenience, to be honest, as
Were
far as
you
the
into
producing thing.
computing skills because you were doing this for school as well? Like, were you into tech classes or something? How is it that you were the guy who had the computer and the software and knew how to handle the interface?
No, I mean, I didn't really do any of that at school. It was, I don't know. I don't know what it was. I just, I guess going whenever back to that freaking My Curse cover, man, that Kill Switch Engage cover, is I remember Taylor had recorded all that stuff, and I had been somewhat into recording before then, but my stuff was trash compared to Taylor's. And so this is kind of funny telling now, looking back on it, is that Taylor was recording the My Curse cover, and I was like, man, this sounds so good. Like, this is crazy. And then so I don't know. I just saw him doing what he did, and then I downloaded the software he had, and I got the interface that he had, and I don't know. I've just always been kind of like a tech savvy guy, really, as far as like phones, computers, and I like to figure stuff out. Like if I don't know how to do
I
it, like
see.
I'll YouTube it, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's
But
kind of
you
how
ended
it
up producing
became.
a couple of albums. Is that correct? You ended up producing them, and your role was producer.
Yeah, yeah, and funny enough, that all of the stuff that I've done, except for one EP or album, was they're all for Taylor. They're all for his band. So I just haven't really pursued it enough. That's something that that I'm guilty at. I haven't pursued it enough, but every time Taylor has something that he needs sent or that he wants produced or mixed mastered, whatever, he always sends it to me. Um, but the first
Just
album
for
that
the
I,
record,
yeah,
just for the record, we're still talking about Taylor Dennis because you're playing a
man,
Taylor Swift tribute band. But whoever is asking you to produce right now is Taylor Dennis, even though the other Taylor may be on the
yes,
horizon at one point.
it always loops back to this guy. I don't know what it is, Taylor Dennis.
Well, it seems
Um,
like you guys might have a great chemistry working together, and that's
oh,
one of the cool things because sometimes we need to find that special person that we can trust, and it obviously seems that for some reason he trusts you, and I'm gonna have to ask him that about that when I get a chance to talk to him. But let's move forward a little bit. After you were done producing these albums, how talk to me about the timeline that takes you from producing these metalcore and power metal albums into them being available or hearing about the opportunity or being invited. How did it happen that you ended up in the Taylor Swift tribute? Because if I recall correctly, this is your first tribute band, correct?
correct, yeah. And you're not gonna believe it. You're not gonna believe it, but Taylor Dennis has something to do with this story too.
Nice,
and
nice. Go ahead.
it cracks me up. So Taylor, I'm not sure if you're familiar with his sister McKenna, but
No.
she was on American Idol and stuff for a little bit. She's a great vocalist, and so uh, Taylor having this sister that's blonde that can sing really well. A guy named Chris McEwen. He you know Chris. Tribute bands in the area, and so I guess he had ran into Taylor at some point. As far as I know, he had ran into Taylor at some point, Taylor Dennis, and he had asked Taylor about his sister and was like, "Hey, would McKenna be interested in doing a Taylor Swift tribute band?" And so he was like, "Yeah, whatever." And so I guess he gave her or gave Chris McKenna's information, and but he was also like, "Hey, there's also a guy that I know that loves Taylor Swift because years prior I had shown Taylor and all of them uh, like Taylor Swift songs. Like, hey, this is good stuff." So all my friends know that I love Taylor Swift, and so that had been years in the brewing. Just that, oh, Jared loves Taylor Swift. Anything Taylor Swift, I always get tagged on Facebook or something like that. But he had told Chris like, hey, there's this guitar player I know, you should hit him up. And so Chris hit me up, and that's essentially how that started.
Okay, so he reached out to you. Tell me about that experience now, because you've already played with rock bands. Now you're playing with a tribute band to probably the most popular artist of the last 10 years. How do those two experiences compare about being live on stage? Because rather than going into a studio, the ultimate goal of this band is to perform live. Talk to us about that. How does it feel for you, Jared?
The differences between the tribute to the original bands I was in.
Correct, and
Um,
also the genres,
yeah,
because it's not only or it's also metalcore and power metal compared to what's essential the quintessential pop queen of the moment.
yeah. So I was with the Vanity Affair until September of 2015. So I was 19 at that point, and so I ended up moving states. I moved out to Northern Virginia, closer to the DC area, and so I lived there for 3 years. And so I was out of the music scene for 3.5, 4 years or so. I didn't do any shows, anything. It was just mainly producing. And so I had been done with that for a minute, but then I come back and, Chris hits me up about the Taylor Swift stuff. Um, so I was out of it for a lot. So I was thirsty for, crowd interactions and all that fun stuff. But to answer it's a very, very big difference. There's a lot of kids at these Taylor Swift tribute shows. There's a lot of families. It's a lot family oriented, Um, and it's also just a different crowd. I don't know, like, because whenever I play with my metal bands, it's more of like grungy rock bars and Deep Ellum or something, and your tiny stages. And not that we don't play smaller stages with the Reputation deal, but it's a very, very different crowd. Very. Um, yeah, I mean, that's really it. It's a very, very different crowd. But what the Taylor Swift tribute is, the crowds are a lot larger, a lot larger.
Now, how about the
Which again,
music that you play? How does it feel for you as a guitar player? As
Yeah.
somebody that doesn't know much about guitar, I imagine that there's a lot more ability to pour out all your energy into the metal thing. Whereas with this, besides of the fact that it's a tribute and people are very familiar with the songs, it just
Uh,
stylistically, there must be a different approach.
yeah, yeah. I mean, great question. As far as that goes, I had never really played country music before until this band. It was a huge learning curve for me, huge, and because I'd always been in the rock genre, and just speed and just chugging were your friend there, and the metal stuff. But Taylor Swift, like whenever I got reached out to play this gig, I was like, oh, it's four chords. This is gonna be so simple. I started learning these songs, man, and it's not as easy as people think. It's really not because you're not using as much of a thing. It's not as, I guess, mushed as it would be in a rock band. It's not as loud and just fast or whatever. Is what I'm trying to say. It's a little bit more buried in a metal band. You can make a lot more mistakes. You're still going to notice, crowd's still going to notice if you mess up in metal bands. It's not what I'm saying. But as far as that, like you're playing like a lot of clean tones. It's there's more of a spotlight on you. And to your point, there is people know these songs. So the second I mess up, they're going to know. But that was a big, 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 big learning curve for me. I just started digging into it, and the way you play solos, like I have to play a Keith Urban solo in our set. That guy, I he doesn't deserve enough credit. I never really gave him the time of day, but guys like that, man, they're freaking good. They're
Yeah.
really good.
Yeah, guys like Keith Urban, Brad Paisley, Vince Gill, who could be among the greatest rock guitar players of all time if they weren't insanely popular as singers and songwriters.
Right, right, yeah, but
But
it was
they're
a big,
great.
yeah.
Now, Jared, well, as we are going to be having to winding this up because we've been talking for about an hour and 5 minutes now, talk to me about the fact that among the tributes, this is a particular tribute because it's not necessarily a tribute to a band; it's a tribute to a solo artist. Taylor
Right.
Swift herself sings, but also so she's a solo artist. How does it feel to be part of a band that plays tribute to a solo artist, where the spotlight, the attention is a lot on the front person, in this case, a female singer of the band? How does it feel for you who have been used to, you've talked about being shy and a little bit introvert, not necessarily spotlight, but where you're equals. When you're that is named even after the singer. How does that dynamic play out? Because most of the tributes are tributes to bands. There's a couple of great
Right.
tributes to solo artists, and yours is one of those. How does that play out? Is there anything that comes to mind? Anything in the chemistry? Anything in your role where you can just stay behind in the stage a little bit more? Talk to me about the fact that it's a tribute to a solo artist.
So yeah, like to your point with that, like Def Leppard, there's the Def Legend band that, like you have guys like that, and the front man's always going to be the focal point in any band. That's just kind of how it is. But all the other guys are a little bit more involved and stuff like that. But with this one, it's the band's just as involved, of course. We play a huge role in that set, but as far as like the Taylor Swift, everyone's focused on that. Like that is the focal point. And so to your point of like me just kind of being shy, like I was a lot when I was younger, not so much anymore, but as far as that type stuff goes is spotlight's on the Taylor Swift character. And so I enjoy it, I mean, because like I get to go up there, do my thing, and I have my 30 seconds of fame, whenever I have a solo or whatever, and it's kind of the best of both worlds for me because I'm getting to play songs that I love, getting to play guitar, and then at the end of the set, the focal point shifts to that Taylor Swift character. So I mean, it's honestly a great gig for me. I love it. It's awesome.
You know what my favorite part of all of this is that you started with saying songs that I love because I absolutely love the music of Taylor Swift. I had a blast at a couple of shows that I've seen with you, but I also noticed something, and I want to ask you. Before, let me ask you, how many times have you played with this band? Because it's been going on for more than a couple of years, right?
So we're actually our first show was March 19th of 2021. So
Oh,
we've
so
only
I probably saw your third show then because I caught you guys live in, if I'm not mistaken, in June of 2021.
was it Gas Monkey or Amplified
Yes,
that you
with
saw us at?
with
Okay.
the Just Like Pink band.
I want to say that show was at the end of May in 2021. So that was
Okay.
only our because we played. It was Legacy Hall was our first show. Our second show was at Maverick in Carrollton.
Your first show was at Legacy Hall. That's one of the venues that a lot of tributes aspire to work. How do you guys score that as your first show?
Man, I don't know. I honestly have no idea. Chris
You were
and the
just the
other
guitar player
guys.
happy to show up.
Yep, yep. It was just, hey man, are you available March 19th? I was like, yep, accept. Cool. Our first show was
How
actually
did it
supposed to
feel?
be.
Because that's a crowded spot. You know, the stage is incredible. The
Yeah.
view that you have from the stage is fantastic. But there's a lot of people there. How did it feel to get your feet wet with this band on a first show of that size?
I was so excited, but I didn't know what to expect. I had never been to Legacy Hall. I had never been, or at least to see a show, so I didn't know what to expect. And having not played a show in what 3 years, 4 years, terrifying. But it was so much fun. It was so much fun because I mean, Legacy Hall, it basically sells out every show that a band plays there. So it's like 12, 1,300 people or so. So it was a lot of fun, but it was definitely nerve wracking. Not even gonna lie.
I see. Now, talk to me about the because I know that you guys have changed the singer of the band. What about experience for you as a guitar player? Again, a lot of the attention is focused on that on the Taylor Swift character from the band. Are there anything that you can share about the experience of changing singer? Does it affect your guitar playing style? Does it affect how you move on stage after you play with somebody for a year and you get reacquainted with somebody new? How does that work for you as a guitar player?
So I mean, I think it would be safe to say, as far as everyone in the band, you know, it's always different. You know, you got to get the chemistry of everyone. Um, but I mean, as far as my guitar playing, no, not really. I still do my thing. Paul does his thing. Chris, Charlotte, Dave, whenever he plays with us, they all do their thing. I mean, it's just kind of a smooth sailing ship, really. But as far as moves and stuff like that, we're still only 2 shows with our new singer, and she's doing great. She's doing great. So, um, not too much of a difference, really.
Okay, well, now let's do something and try to promote the upcoming shows. I know that sometimes new shows come up, so rather than mention specific shows, unless you have some in mind, please do mention where can people go and find out information about a specific website, specific Facebook page, where they will be able to find upcoming dates so they can catch Reputation, the Taylor Swift tribute.
So our next show is actually this Saturday. It's in Plano, Texas. It's up in the Call Plaza. It's right there off the 15th Street. I believe we go on at 9 p.m.
Yeah.
As far as looking it up, I'm sure that we have a Facebook event. If you go to Reputation, a Taylor Swift Experience, you can find it there. It's a free show. We have an opener. It's a country artist, a singer songwriter. She's opening up for us. And then after that, our next show is July 30th. I want to say 30th, I believe it is. It's up in Pennsylvania, actually.
Oh,
It's at
wow.
a yeah, it's at a vineyard. I can't remember exactly the name of the vineyard, but I've had to double check it. But yeah, it's
Now,
up
the
in
interesting thing is
Pennsylvania.
that Taylor Swift herself is from Pennsylvania, so you're starting to hit
Yeah,
close for her.
yeah. I looked it up. It's like it's about 3 hours away from her hometown.
Yeah,
Um,
but there must be a lot of people who are going to be very excited to see you guys perform there in Pennsylvania.
yeah, yeah. I have a family that's actually over in Ohio. And they're going to drive about an hour and a half for them. They're going to come out, which will be a lot of fun. I'm so happy they can come. It's a Vinoski Winery, is what it's called. It's
Great,
over in
great.
it's in Bell Vernon, Pennsylvania.
Okay, now Jared, so that we can review some of your previous work as a producer as well, why don't you mention the names of the bands that you would like people to try to go and find out on whether it's at streaming platforms or on YouTube, so that they can also get a glimpse of your other work before the Taylor Swift Reputation tribute. Go ahead and mention the name of those bands and if you know where they can be found.
So as far as bands I've produced, Dreamkeeper, that's the number one that I've done the most for. They're on all platforms: Spotify, Apple Music,
For
basically
somebody new
anywhere.
to Dreamkeeper, which album would you recommend they start with, or which song are you feeling most proud
Um,
of?
oh man, as far as that one goes, in a parallel world is the album. At least I think it is. Taylor, don't kill me. Sorry. That's the OG album that they have. I'm actually working on a single for them right now, so that'll be out soon. But yeah, any platform as far as that goes. I Embracer is another band that Taylor threw at me as far as producing. That's on all platforms as well. And then the last project that I've worked on was from aside from Taylor was a band called Sweet City Manor. There were actually the two guys that I mentioned that were up in Minnesota. They flew down in 2019, I believe it was, to record that album with me, and so that's on all platforms as well. It's I'm not gonna give you the name of the album because it's a little vulgar, but Sweet City Manor is there. They're like a
Sweet
pop
City
punk.
Manners, I Embracer, and if I'm not mistaken, it's spelled I, comma Embracer, and then we
Yes,
have Dreamkeeper as the bands that you
Dreamkeeper.
produce for, and then we have Taylor Swift. The tribute to Taylor Swift, Reputation is the name of the band, and that can be found on Facebook. It's got thousands of followers already. And Jared, before we depart, I need to ask you this: if you had to find not your house because you're a new guy, if your hard drive were cracking down and everything was gonna be white, or will you try to rescue from that hard drive?
Oh, Taylor Swift.
Any kind of record. Okay, let's start with Taylor Swift. Which song
You cut it.
will you have to rescue and again because you love it so much, right, Taylor Swift?
Oh man, New Romantics is probably one of my favorite Taylor Swift songs.
From
I
1989,
Yeah, I
the
love that
album
song, man.
1989.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
it's one of my favorites. It's one of
Um,
the favorites of my daughter as well. She mentions it a lot.
yeah, it's one of those B sides that a lot of people don't really give enough attention to.
Yeah,
But yeah,
well,
sorry, I
probably
didn't hear you on
because
that
it
that
was a
last
B-side.
bit.
That well, the other part is what record will you try to rescue from your crashing hard drive if it were to be crashing and you knew you couldn't recover anything but one album of it?
Uh, oh my God. That's hard. That's very hard. But I would probably it's gonna surprise some people. But as Daylight Dies, Kill Switch Engage. That's that album I'd listen to on repeat constantly. So that would be one to name for sure.
As Daylight Dies by Killswitch Engage. I'm gonna listen to them because I'm not very familiar with Killswitch Engage. I think I might have an album there, but I'm gonna listen to them. Okay, Jared, you know what? It's been fantastic talking to you. So on my final question, I wanted to ask you this hypothetical question that I ask almost everybody. Imagine that for whatever reason, and again, it's hypothetical, so we're not gonna put on a tragedy or something. You are never able to play live again, and you're never able to enter the studio. You're just going to be disconnected from music. You cannot do any of that. What will you take with you for the rest of your life? You're still in your early 30s. What will you take with you for the rest of your life of what you've experienced so far uh, about the music experiences if you were never able to do any of that again?
Oh my. What would I take with me? Just shows I've played, man. The crowds that we've played to. I would definitely take that with me for sure. Just the memories of that.
Great memories. The good thing is that it's a hypothetical question. We get more chances to see you perform with Reputation, a tribute to Taylor Swift. I'm definitely going to be catching your next shows. Not the one in Pennsylvania, though, unfortunately. Unless you want to
Yeah,
hire me
go
as a
for it.
guitar tech and train me, and train me. I'll bring money for food me to Pennsylvania.
Hey,
Jared, it's
bring
been
three
great
hundred
talking to
bucks.
you. I'll bring for food. You take care of the rest.
Right, right.
I'm gonna have to hit up your grandma for that money. See if she wants to invest into that. So
There you
Jared,
go.
it's been a great conversation. I love getting to discover more about you. Again, I'm a massive Taylor Swift fan, so I've loved watching you play twice the guitar for the Reputation, the Taylor Swift tribute. Looking forward to more of that. Looking forward to hearing more Dreamkeeper. I become a fan of that band actually, and I wanted to thank you. And like I always say to anybody listening, please go ahead and follow the Love Live Rocking podcast. It's on Facebook and on their YouTube with the same name, Love Live Rocking. If you want to add me as a friend on Facebook, go ahead. Wilmar Elvis. Elvis is actually my legal name. Both of them are my legal names. So that's not a fake name or nickname. It's actually my legal name, Wilmar Elvis. Add me. I'm very happy to add more friends to the music scene. And Jared, like I always say, if I see you at a show or you see me, don't say hello. Please say hola. But now it's time to say adios. Adios, Jared.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me on.